Well, hello, my little babies. Welcome back to another. That was too close, wasn't it? I should bring it back. Bring it back. Hello, my little babies. Welcome back to another episode of What the Smut. Scream it out into the ether. Hi, it's me, Candace. Welcome back to another episode. A couple things to note before we get started. The air coming from my vent is much louder than normal. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Also, there's a fan on above my head that's making the light seem circular, like blah, 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 blah. I can't turn it off or I'll sweat to death. So we're going to ignore it. If you see any changes in lighting during this video, ignore it. Okay? Do you want me to die? It's almost as if you don't love me at all. Rude. Okay, let's get into this because I have some things to say. I have some things to say about this book, okay? So, yeah. In today's video, we are going to be reviewing this book. This is Hans by S.J. Tilley. This is book 4 in the Alliance series. And as far as I know, from what I've heard, this is the last book in the Alliance series. Sad. That makes me sad. But, you know, I'm going to reserve my final thoughts for the end because I have some. This book and all the books in this series are free to read with KU. If you want to purchase this book for your Kindle, you can get it for the current price of $4.99. And I say current price. If you're watching this a year from now and the price is different or it's not available in KU anymore, don't come for me. Okay? I can only live in the present, in the moment, one day at a time. It's my life philosophy. One day at a time. I can't be responsible. Can't be held responsible. She was touching her face. Sorry. I thought about that song for the first time the other day in about 20 years. And I could not for the life of me remembered who sung it or the name of the song. And it drove me insane for a good number of minutes until I had to Google it. Anyway, moving on. If you want to purchase this book for your Kindle, I already said it was $4.99. If you want this book in paperback form, you can get it right now for $16.99. If you want a hardcover version of this book, you can get it for $25.99 on Amazon. This book is also available in audio. I did the audio. I listened to the audio. The audio is narrated by Chloe Ryan and Jack Callahan, just like the 3 books before this one. If you watched my previous video on this series, not my previous video, my actual previous video, because that's for another book. But the last book I did for this series, I went off on a little side tangent, which I'm going to try not to do right now. Because it's redundant, isn't it? But all I'm going to say is, please change narrators for every book in a series. Because when I hear the same woman, and no shade to Chloe Ryan, because her voice was decent and I didn't mind it. And usually the girl's voice irritates me. But if I hear Chloe Ryan's voice for all 4 characters in this series, they will all become one character for me. So I now have one giant amalgamation of a female character and one giant amalgamation of a main male character. They're all the same. They're all the same. So I don't know if you do that, but I do that. I need differentiating voices. I need to be able to mentally separate one character from another. And the main way to do that is by having them have different voices. Even if you hired the same narrators and you went, okay, I'm going to pay the same narrators. I like working with them. They're really good at what they do. Their voices are great. You know, blah, 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 blah. Maybe I get a discount for doing multiple books with the same people. Fine. Make them alter their voice. And also, while we're at it, let's talk about consistency. Because if we're listening to 4 books in the same series that have the same narrators, I don't expect for that male narrator to make Nero sound a certain way in his own book and then completely alter his voice in the other 3 books. And it's not even like he altered it one time. In every single book, Nero sounded different. In every single book, King sounded different. Why? Was it just that you forgot the gravel, the amount of gravel to put into the certain voice from one book to another? Research, people. Go back and listen to your work. What did he sound like? Okay, let me make him sound like that again. I feel like I'm raging and I'm being unreasonable, but I also don't think I'm being unreasonable. You know what I mean? So, no shade to S.J. Tilley, because authoring is hard, but these are my notes, and this is just my humble opinion, okay? My opinion, and everyone's entitled to an opinion. And I don't, if you know anything about me, and you know anything about this channel, you will know that I don't review books that I would rate under, say, a 7. On a scale of 1 to 10, if I thought it was absolute dog shit, you would not see it on this channel. I can't tell you the number of books that I have read and either DNF'd or pushed my way to the end and then gone, I hated that. And then I don't do a review for it. Because again, authoring is hard. And having someone shit all over work that you spent a year making is hard. And so in addition to not tagging the author in the reviews I do, because unless it's an absolutely stellar review and I complain about absolutely nothing, which, let's be honest, when was the last time I did that? I'm not going to tag the author in the review. I used to. And then it got to the point where I realized, maybe they don't want to hear me rage about their audiobook narrators for an hour. They don't need to know that. If they go looking for it and they find it, then that's on them. You was nosy, and I get it. I'm nosy too. I still read my fucking reviews for my book, even now, 2 years later. The other day, someone left me an Amazon review for the first book that I ever wrote, my debut novel. And they said my writing style was terrible. And then they accused me of using AI to write my book. And so I was like, thank you. You think my work is good enough to have been written by AI? What a compliment. So I still read my reviews. So it would not surprise me in the least if authors, much bigger authors like S.J. Tilley, like Penelope Douglas, like whoever, still occasionally from time to time reads reviews for their books. Because you go there thinking you're going to get a pick-me-up and you're going to get like a little zing of like, oh my God, somebody really loved my book. And a lot of times you don't. You get the opposite. But I'm not going to tag the author if I thought the book was shit. Because that's just mean. So, I won't be tagging her in this. I'm not saying this book was shit by any means. So before we get ahead of ourselves, I'm not saying that. But I'm not going to be tagging her in this. But in addition to not tagging her in this, I am also here to review this book because I still think that many, many people will enjoy it. And that's why it's getting a video. Because if you know anything about me, I want every single book reviewed on this channel to be a book I would recommend you read. So, here we are. So, I'm going to get into the deets for the book. I'll read you the blurb. We'll go from there. And then I'll give you my gripes because there were some gripes. Oh, that's the wrong one. I have my trusty little blurb printout because I don't have the book. Because I don't own the original. And Mystic Box only did the first two, which I get it. They only do 2 books a box. But you couldn't have done Dom. He was my favorite. I would trade Nero and King just for Dom. Give me. Anyway, the 2 main characters for this book are Hans, who we met in the last book, and Cassie. Her full name is Cassandra. He calls her Cassandra throughout the entire book. I don't know why he did that. Because everybody else calls her Cassie. So, maybe it was like his version of like a nice little pet name kind of thing. Anyway, the first part of the blurb is from Cassie's POV. And it says, how to make the handsome, brooding man across the street notice me. Step 1. Deliver baked goods to his front porch, even though he never answers his door and always returns the containers when I'm not home. Step 2, slowly lose my mind as a whole year passes without ever running into him, no matter how hard I try. Step 3, have my boudoir photos accidentally delivered to his mailbox instead of mine. Have him open the package. Then have him storm into my home for the most panty-melting scolding of my life. Step 4, still figuring out step 4. I'm not gonna lie, that was cute. Hans, I'm a dangerous man. Are you, boy? Are you? A man who has spent the last 2 decades removing so many souls from this earth that it's a miracle my hands aren't permanently stained red. I'm a man who belongs in the shadows. I certainly don't belong in my pretty little neighbor's bedroom when she's not home, touching her things and inhaling her scent. I shouldn't follow her, shouldn't watch her, because no number of cookies on my doorstep will change the fact that love isn't an option for me. The only option left for me is violence. Okay. Ooh, it just got much quieter in here. Did you hear that? The air. My house is falling apart. Anyways, so, like I said, the 2 main characters for this book are Cassie and Hans. We met Hans in the previous book when he showed up at the end in a restaurant with grenades strapped all to his chest, claiming, "You're not the man I think I am. I'm not a bad guy." Right? The book opens with Cassie and Hans living right across the street from each other. Quiet little cul-de-sac in a quiet little neighborhood. And there's 3 houses at the end of the cul-de-sac. Hers, across from her is him, and then adjacent them, like in the very corner, is an empty lot. Or not an empty lot, but an empty house. No one's lived there. No one currently lives there. Why? Because Hans bought that house. And he would have bought Cassie's house too, because he wanted the whole street to himself for his nefarious purposes. But she had already bought the house. And then he couldn't make her move, because once he saw her, he became obsessed with her. I love me a good obsessed man. When a man breaks into a woman's house to touch her stuff, to smell her stuff, to sleep in her bed. Yes, he does that. He breaks into her house. He's like low-key taking care of her through this entire book because she is the most absent-minded. Like, there's been times that she's left her oven on, she leaves her doors unlocked, like, and he will come over to her house after she's gone to work, and he will break in, make sure she's turned everything off, and then snoop a little, and then he'll leave. One day he comes in and he snoops too much, and he can't stop himself from laying down in her bed where she sleeps, like in her spot. And he gets so comforted by the smell of her that he falls asleep. Never happened before. He's a very staunch, very stoic, I want to say old man, but he's not really an old man. How old is Hans? He's 39. Cassie is 30. So there is a slight age gap, but not a crazy age gap. Unlike the previous books, because the previous books we saw legit age gaps, like 15, 20-year age gaps, right? But he's never done anything like that. I don't let myself slip. I don't fuck up and fall asleep in someone's bed that I'm stalking. But he does. Several hours pass. He doesn't wake up until she comes home from work. He hears her car pull up outside. He wakes up. He has to climb out of her bedroom window to get out. And he does manage to escape before he gets caught, which is something I didn't expect because I thought he would get caught. Was I wishing he would get caught? Maybe. Maybe, baby. But he didn't. He got loose. He was scattered. He skedaddled to his house. Hans is very low-key. Cassie hates the fact that he's very low-key because while he's been low-key stalking her, she's been watching him through her windows, and she never sees him because he never comes out of his house. And the times when he does leave his house, he gets in his truck that's parked in his garage, the closed garage, and then when he's ready to actually leave, he pulls his truck out and he drives away. And then when he comes home, he drives straight into the garage, door comes down, she never sees him. Even though she's like peeping through the blinds. So what she's decided to do, because Cassie is she leads a very aimless life. She has tried many, many a hobby and found herself to be good at none of them. And her latest hobby is baking. She wants to actually be a baker. And to kill time or to have something to do outside of just working. What the fuck does she do? She's a remote HR worker. She works from home. So she works in HR for some company that I can't even fucking remember. So to have something to do, she bakes. And she starts blogging what she bakes. Every time she bakes, she takes a Tupperware container of these baked goods to Hans's house, leaves them on the front porch with a Post-it note on top saying what they are, right? Everything she bakes is god awful. Like, she fucks up literally everything. He's so obsessed, almost to the point of compulsive, that regardless of how disgusting he finds the food, he forces himself to eat every single cookie or every single bar or every single piece of cake. It doesn't matter. He will eat it. He will choke on it while he eats it he will gag, but he'll still eat it. And that part was a little bit, sir, nobody's stopping you. You're inside your own home. Nobody's stopping you from just throwing this in the trash. But he won't. He will eat it. And then he washes the Tupperware. He keeps all of the Post-its. They're very important to him. Again, almost like a compulsion. He stacks one on top of the other as he gets them in his like bedside table or his nightstand or whatever, and then returns the Tupperware to her house. But he makes sure she's not home, and he leaves it on the doorstep. So after a year of doing this, playing this little game with each other, she has done like a boudoir photo shoot, and the package gets delivered to his house by mistake. Like the mailman, she didn't plan it. It's not a scheme like concocted to get him to like talk to her. No, it was actually done by the mailman. He delivered it to the wrong mailbox. Hans gets the package. He can clearly see it's not for him. First of all, that's a federal offense, sir. Opening someone else's mail. He does it anyway. He don't care. What is the law? He's an assassin. So, hold please. Okay. So, he opens the package. He sees that it's like a flip book of pictures. Like it's a photo album with boudoir photos. Pictures of his fantasy come to life. Picture after picture of her in different poses, in her underwear, lying on the bed, on her hands and knees, yada, yada, yada. Everything that a man needs to get like, whoop, right? Okay. And he goes nuts. All of his precautions, all of his mantra of, I'm not going to talk to her, I'm not having anything to do with her, it's too dangerous. I can't be in a relationship, I can't be with somebody because the lifestyle that I live, right? Goes out the window. He storms across the street to her house with the book and demands to know who she took these pictures for. Who are these for? Did you take these for a man? For a man that's not me? Right? She's caught off guard, to say the least. Then that interaction turns into a lot of sexual tension. And then, if I'm not mistaken, he ravishes her a little bit. I can't really remember if it was just a kiss or if he like full on like anyway, we're going to talk through that because so he basically ravishes her a little bit, and then he just leaves. He just walks out with the book. He keeps the book and he leaves, and she's standing there like, what just happened? And also, can I get my pictures back? So later on that day, he gets a text message from his, I won't say they're like partners, but they're as close to a friend as he has in his current lifestyle. And that her name's Carmen. She is like the leader of an all-female group of, it's like a hit squad, basically. It's the female group that saved Dom and Val at the end of their book. And she's like the ringleader. All of the women in this hit squad are women who have been saved from like sex trafficking scenarios and then trained to be assassins. So they're very capable females. Okay. So he gets a text from Carmen that says, hey, I got a job for you. And he's like, shit, all right, So he goes out, he kills a bunch of people. While he's there, he gets punched in the throat by a bad guy. The next day, Cassie comes over. I want my fucking book back. Can I have my book back, please? No. He does answer the door this time. And he's like, no, I'm not giving it back. When she hears his voice, which is extremely rough from where he got throat punched, she thinks he's getting sick. And she like mother hens him and takes care of him. And he just like sits there and takes it. Like lets her in the house, lets her like pamper him a little bit, etc., right? So she ends up falling asleep on his couch. He carries her upstairs to his bed and puts her in his bed and then sleeps with her in the bed. Like cuddling. Like, this is totally normal. Let's just sleep together in this bed. She wakes up first. She sneaks out. The next day, she has to go to dinner with her at her parents' house. Her car won't start. He's still watching her. P.S. He has cameras set up all over her, like all over around her house. The outside of her house, like the perimeter, he's like very protective of her. And he's kind of contented himself with just watching her from afar and keeping her safe as best he can, hoping that nobody comes after him. Well, he sees that her car won't start. She goes over to his house and knocks on his door and asks to borrow his truck. You've barely spoken to this man. Granted, his tongue's been all down your throat, but you have known him for a year, barely spoken to him, and you're asking to borrow his car. I wouldn't give you my fucking car either. That's weird. But she asks him. Of course he says no, not because he doesn't trust her with his car, but because his car is full of weapons. Like, he's got hidden compartments all in his truck of just like grenades and semi-automatic weapons and katanas and all these other things. So he's like, no, I'm not going to give you my truck, but I will take you to your parents' house. So he takes her with the intention of sitting outside and waiting for her to come out, and he's going to bring her back home. She's like, I can't let you just sit in the car. You have to come inside. So he comes inside. And they have dinner together with her parents. Her dad is like, he's somewhat like Hans in a way, where he's married, he's older, he's settled down now, and he professes to have had a certain kind of life, when in reality he was more like, before I got married, I was in like special ops and I've seen some shit and I've been through some shit. And so he recognizes in Hans like a kindred, like what was it that he said? He's a health inspector. That's the profession that he chose to tell her parents that he has. He's a health inspector. He's like a 7-foot-tall Viking blonde who's a health inspector. And her dad's like, I call bullshit. But he still doesn't tell him what he does for a living because that would be too much. But they make it through dinner. And at dinner, he reveals to her parents in conversation, because her mom is nosy as fuck. He reveals to her parents in conversation that both of his parents are deceased. They both died from pneumonia, very close to each other. But before they died, his sister was abducted. She went on a trip to a place with friends. And while she was there, her and her friend were abducted. And they were essentially put into a human trafficking ring. Like, she was taken. And Hans, no, they didn't go on a trip. They went to a club. I'm pretty sure they went to a club. And Hans knew that she was going before she went, that she was planning on using a fake ID to sneak into a club. And he didn't say anything. He was a teenager when this happened. And the amount of guilt that he feels over his sister's death, because they don't find her alive. She was really messed up when he tracked down who took her. Or not specifically who took her, like the lead guy, but like when he tracked her down, she was in a bad state. And yeah, anyway, she didn't live. And the guilt he feels is immense. And from that point on, he's made it his mission in life to kill human traffickers. Like, it's his job. He goes out, he assassinates people. Carmen and her team do a lot of the work when it comes to finding out who's doing what. And then he just goes and he kills them. So nice. So that comes out at dinner. And he tells the story very right? Like very deadpan. But he still says it. And Cassie's like, oh my God. And she's crying and like, you know what I mean? Like, this is not good dinner conversation. But again, her mom is nosy as shit. So they get back. He parks his truck in the garage. By the time they get back to his house, the conversation from dinner they've moved on. The drive back, he's basically just fiending for her. And this is the moment, there's a hair in my eye. This is the moment when I should have known that this book was going to put me off the rails. This should have been my warning, my red flag that this book was going to put me off the rails. So they get back into his garage. He lowers the garage door. It's totally dark inside the garage. He makes her get out of the truck, bend over, bend over his work table in the garage, and in the dark, he proceeds to eat her ass. Listen, I know there's a lot of books out there that have anal and a lot of butt play stuff, and, you know, I'm going to put a butt plug in you. I get it. It's out there, right? And it may be lots of people's cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea. So when this happened, no preamble, no, like, we're going to have a couple of sex sessions or interactions and then I will work my way up to doing stuff to your butt. No. Their first sexual encounter, and he's just down there, and I went, what? What? No, please, no. So that had happened. And then obviously they have sex. And from that point on, they're in like this weird stasis where they don't really know what they are or what they're doing for a while. She has to go on a work trip to, I forget where it is, like Mexico, New Mexico, I forget. It happens to be like the sex trafficking capital of the world, or of North America, or whatever. And she's like, I'm flying there with my coworkers. It's a mandatory thing. I have to go. And he's like, I don't like that, but okay. So she goes, she packs her shit and she leaves. She gets on a plane. He packs his shit. He leaves. He gets on a plane right after her. He follows her to Mexico and then proceeds to stay in the same hotel she's in and watch her comings and goings, because there's like a bus shuttle that takes all of them from the hotel to the warehouse or wherever it is that they're supposed to be having their meetings and shit. So he like watches and he just follows her until, of course, as expected, their bus gets hijacked on the way back to the hotel one day after their meetings. Their bus gets hijacked and she's on the verge of getting kidnapped or abducted. And he comes in from the back of the bus, busts down the door. He's wearing a ski mask, but she can see his eyes. And he proceeds to kill all the guys in front of them, like on the bus, everybody screaming, blah, blah, blah. He kills the bad guys. While he's there, he yells at her to sit down. And she's like, I know who that is. There's no way. There's no way that's him. He then drives the bus to the American Embassy and tells everybody to get the fuck off the bus. Go inside. Tell them what happened. Go home. So they do. He leaves. He disappears. She gets back home and she's like, I know that was him, but how do I approach this situation? How would you? I don't know. So she gets back home and she falls into her comfort routine of going back to baking and blogging. And she's in the kitchen and she's baking something and she hears a noise in her backyard through like the window, the open window. And she's like, it's probably like a squirrel or something. It's just my imagination. She gets paranoid. She goes and pulls a crossbow from underneath like a bench in the hallway or something. And she flings open the back door and flips on the light. And there's a man in her backyard that she's never seen before. She doesn't know who it is. And she has like a little freak out. She trips backwards and in tripping hits and she miraculously shoots him with the arrow straight through his neck. And he dies in her backyard. He bleeds out. She freaks out. She can't think of anything else to do. I'm going to run across the street. I'm going to tell Hans. So she does. Hans takes her down to the basement where he has a safe room, like with all of the camera feeds of her own house. He locks her in there and tells her to stay put. She snoops. She goes through his little closets and shit, realizes that like he's obsessed with Skittles because he thinks that she tastes like Skittles. And it's just a whole bunch of things. She puts on his hoodie, etc., right? He goes over. He sees the guy. Clearly, it's somebody who was after him and got confused on which house, where he was, right? Too late now, he's dead. And all this evidence is in her backyard. So what choice do we have? They know where I live now. Somebody is coming after me and they know where I live. And now Cassie's not safe. I'm definitely not safe, but Cassie's definitely not safe. So what other choice do I have but to blow up both of our houses? He goes back. He tells her, grab this bag. It's a whole bag full of your own clothes that I have stolen over the course of the last year from your house. That's our go bag. I'm gonna grab a bag for me. That's yours. We're gonna leave the house, and then we'll have to come back later we'll figure it out. So they leave. He needs to get rid of the body from Cassie's backyard, right? This is before he blows her house up. He has to get rid of the body. He puts it in a body bag, and he goes to Nero's like kill house, or his like where it's, you know, the junkyard that's mentioned in Nero's book. He goes there and he throws the body bag over the fence. Nero's security goes, his alarms go off. Hans calls Nero from the car. Hey, I know that you don't know me and we're not friends, but I need you to help me identify a body. Because all of my equipment for identifying someone is either at my house that I can't be at anymore, or the other means that I have is Carmen, and she's busy. She's busy doing something else. Nero's like, so that was you that just set off all my alarms at the junkyard? And he's like, yes, I threw a body over your fence. Tenuously, Nero agrees to give him the information. It'll take me a day. I'll call you tomorrow. Okay. So they go to a hotel. More sex. Okay. This time, thankfully, nothing in the butt. Then it turns out that the guy who was in Cassie's yard is an underling for a human trafficker, like a French guy. And it just so happens to be the man who was responsible for his sister's abduction, that he's been hunting for the last however many years, 20 years, and has not been able to track down. And now they know that he's after Hans. Why? Because Hans is killing all of his people, probably, but whatever. So, essentially, they hide out after they get the ID, Hans has to go back to his house. He's like, I need to go back to my house to get some shit. I don't want to leave Cassie alone, so you're coming with me. She goes with him. While they're there getting his shit, 5 more dudes show up. He kills all of them. She watches him on camera from the basement kill these guys with a katana in his house. While she's watching him, she's getting like sexually excited. He's so virile. He's so, right? So now there's a bunch of, not just one dead body, a bunch of dead bodies. I have to destroy the evidence. What other choice do I have but to blow up my house and blow up Cassie's house? Because Cassie had a dead dude in her backyard and there's blood everywhere. So if I blow them up and set them on fire, then the fire department will come. They'll douse everything in water and then wash away any remnants of evidence that might be there. So that's what they do. They leave. He blows up both houses. The only thing he takes from his house, in addition to obviously like his ID and money and whatever, is the stack of Post-its from all the baked goods that she's given him, which I thought was very fucking cute. They leave. They don't really have anywhere to go. Nero calls. I got that ID, blah, 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 right? It's the French guy. They end up going to King's house and staying with them for a couple of days. And during that time, they meet the rest of the gang. And this is one thing that kind of threw me off a little bit. She doesn't know what to do with herself at King's house. She's with the other women, Val and Peyton and Savannah. And she decides to bake Val some cookies because Val's pregnant. And at no point do they say these cookies are trash. I kept waiting for that to happen. I kept waiting for these cookies to be disgusting. Because literally every single recipe she tried up to this point was gross. But now, miraculously, it's not gross. I found that part weird. Anyway, they stay with King while the guys work out. There's a lot of like friendly dude banter during this part, which I really enjoyed. They stay with King and the rest of the gang while they look into, obviously, the French guy, right? So while they're at King's house, they make like this elaborate plan they find out that the guy, the French guy, Gabriel, what the fuck is his name? Gabriel something. Anyway, Marcoux. Gabriel Marcoux. I think that's his name. They find out that he's going to be in a certain location. They think it's a trap, but they're going anyway because he needs to die, right? So they make this elaborate plan. The night before they leave, he asks her if he can put a tracker inside her. Like, he wants to put a tracker into her skin. I didn't think that would be hot, but it was. It was. He puts the tracker in her arm. And the next day, she says yes, by the way. He doesn't do it. He's not like Dom, where he just drugged her and did it anyway. He asked her, and she was like, I never want to be. At this point, she's in love with him, right? She fell for him very fast. And she's like, I never wish to be parted from you. Sure, do it. So he does. He puts the tracker in her arm. The next day, she gets outfitted with like cargo pants or camo pants or whatever, a long sleeve, black t-shirt, blah, 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 combat boots. And he's like, goddamn, you look hot as fuck. They're getting ready to go. Like, they're going to the airport, right? And this is when, I don't know. I don't know if it was, okay. So prior to that, when they're riding in his car at some point, he says something to her, and she jokingly calls him daddy. And my brain went, right? But then I thought, okay, Candace, no, calm down. It was just a joke. It's not gonna happen again. It happened again. After he puts the tracker in her and they have sex, it goes full on daddy kink, to the point where he's talking about wanting to get her pregnant, or like they're talking about him like eventually knocking her up. And then it also brings in like, you're gonna let me drink your milk lactation fetish. No. Again, if that's your thing and you like it, get filled to capacity. For me, in my opinion, no. Okay? If you have watched any of my videos from way back, if you've watched any number, you will know if there's one kink that I literally cannot with, It's daddy kink. It's just not my thing. It's not my thing to the point it makes me cringe so bad. Okay? When this happened, I was so mad because I was really loving their relationship up to this point. I mean, even getting past the butt stuff, right? There were so many moments in the book where something would happen or something would be said and I would just go, oh my God, that's so fucking cute. Or, oh my God, I love that. Or, oh my God, you're making me get choked up, right? When she first realizes that he's been watching her and she sees like all his cameras and stuff in the basement of her house, like the camera feeds, when he walks back in, she looks at him and she goes, are you obsessed with me? I literally wrote that down in like my section where it's like, what do I like and dislike? In the likes part, I literally just wrote, are you obsessed with me? LOL. But there were so many moments throughout this book like that where I thought this is so fucking cute. And then the daddy kink happened. And I was like, I hate you. As J. Tilly, I hate you. Okay? I don't really hate you. But I was like, I was so into it. I was all in. And then you did this to me. And I felt targeted. I felt attacked. on a level that I shouldn't have, because she didn't write that book for me. But still, I felt victimized. Okay. Anyway, long story short, that's not short because we've been here for an hour. They go to the airport. They are like unloading stuff into like the hangar and they're getting the guns and the whatever, right? An airplane lands and pulls up. And somebody literally jumps, it must have been a small plane, jumps out of the plane, like down the stairs, grabs Cassie and drags her into the plane, and without it even stopping, it just turns around and takes back off again. Hans is standing there helpless, because if he shoots down the plane, Cassie will die. There's no way for him to physically go after it. It's not like a car chase where he can just go down the street and you know, chase the car that she's been taken in. He can't. She's in the fucking air, right? Luckily, she still has the tracker in her arm, so he's able to track where they go. Convenient, right? So they load up. They go after her. She gets saved. The bad guy dies, etc., 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 right? Okay. What I found really unique and interesting in this book, as opposed to many of the other books, and I think recently I read another one where like the female main character saves herself at the end. And I really appreciate books that do that, because there's always that dynamic of, especially in like MF romance, there's always that dynamic of the man is the alpha male. If there's not like a regular like third act breakup, there's always like a third act life or death scenario, right? And 9 times out of 10, he's the one that comes in and saves her. She's the damsel in distress. He has to go get her, right? And I appreciate those books too, because that's like typical romance, and I love that. But I really appreciate the ones where either she saves herself or she saves him. I like those too. At the end of this one, Cassie ends up being the one to kill the French guy. Even though throughout the book it was touted that Gabriel was Hans's to kill. He told the other men, we're going in, but Gabriel is mine. You can kill whoever else you want, anybody else involved, but he's mine. And so you would think automatically that he would be upset that she killed him, but he's not. He sees her as his savior. She loves me enough that she literally just killed someone for me. To be fair, she killed someone to protect, not only for him, but also to protect 3 other women that they had found in like a dank little bedroom off to the side that was clearly getting used for sex trafficking. And Gabriel comes strolling out of like the back room. And he's like, "You're not a killer. You're not going to do shit." And she's like, "Oh, for real? Pow, pow." And she shoots him like 2 or 3 times. And her aim is good. For someone who's never killed anybody, sans the guy that she crossbowed to death, her aim, she could be a future assassin. She has good aim. She's good at nothing. But miraculously, she's good at this. You crossbowed a dude right through the neck. Now you've just killed this guy. You shot him dead center forehead. I think you need a career change. Fuck those cookies. You need to join Carmen and her crew because you have skills. You got skills, girl. So anyway, they get her out, right? He takes her back to the airplane. He's like doctoring her up and whatever because she was barefoot and she's got glass in her feet and okay, right? He's being very overprotective, and the amount of emotion and love that he felt at that point because of what she had just done for him, and because he was finally free of the burden of having that weight of my sister's killer is still running rampant. And that was his life's purpose, tracking this man down. And now it's over. And the amount of love that he has for her at that point was so overwhelming that I was like, by this time I was worked into like a frenzy. And then the epilogues happened. And there were some weird things. And then there was some very emotional things. The first epilogue. Was it the first one? No, wait. No, okay. So it goes into the epilogue. And it's from Peyton's POV. If you've read these books, or if you've watched any of my reviews for the previous books, you will know that I mentioned where S.J. Tilly has a habit of putting like one random chapter in one of the books that's from the POV of someone else from like one of the previous books. So like King's book Nero's book had like a POV chapter from King's POV. And then the next one had like a chapter where it was Nero's POV. It was weird, right? I've never seen that done before. Maybe once, but other than that, no. So when I got to this, I was like, why is Peyton doing the epilogue? This is the point where I realized that this was the end of the series. Because not only does Peyton start off the epilogue, but she then S.J. Tilly then systematically goes through a POV from every female character. And it's like almost like an extended epilogue that takes place over a certain amount of months. And so it kind of shows how their families are progressing after all this drama. Val has the baby. Cassie comes up and says she's pregnant. Like it shows like the progression of their relationships, right? So at the very end, the final bit of the epilogue is from Hans's POV. And he's visiting the graves for his family. And he takes a Post-it note, like the ones that Cassie was giving him, and he puts a Post-it note on top of Freya's grave, his sister. And then in his inner monologue, I can't remember if it's in his inner monologue or if that's what he wrote on the Post-it, but he just said this, he says this isn't goodbye. And I don't know why, and I don't know why I'm getting upset right now, but I just burst into tears. So stupid. I don't cry at books. I don't like books that make me emotional. I mean, I want to feel it. Like, I want to feel the emotion, but I don't want to be hysterical. There are people out there in the book community who live for that feeling, who want to read books that are going to rip their heart out. As long as at the end they put everything back together. I don't want that. I don't want to be hurt that way. So I don't go out of my way to read books that I know people have said, this book will make you cry. I didn't expect that from this book. I haven't cried at any of the other three. But for some reason, it got to that point, and I just immediately burst into tears. And like, even now, just thinking about it makes me emotional. But he talks to his parents, and he talks to his sister, and then he leaves. And that was, for me, I felt in the moment, all of the different POV'd epilogue bits felt weird. Because it's like, why are you doing it this way? But taking into consideration that this was the end of the series, it felt necessary. And it wasn't out of place, and it wasn't weird. It was comforting. And I liked it. So, again, stupid. My mascara is gonna run so hard. So, anyway, would I recommend that you read this book? If you don't mind daddy kink, yes, I would absolutely recommend that you read this book. If the daddy kink is your thing, you're gonna love it. You are gonna love it, okay? For me, for the rating for the book, I would probably give it about an 8. Because there were so many bits that I really loved. But there were also certain bits that I really hated. I'm sorry, it's just my opinion. For the notes for this book, I know I personally have a thing, sorry, my makeup's gonna be a hot mess. I personally have a thing for nicknames. When the guy gives the main female character a nickname, especially if it's a nickname in another language, give me more. He doesn't have a nickname for her in another language, but for reference, he does call her Butterfly. And at points in the beginning, because he's older than her by, 9 years, he called her Girl, which I found really adorable. I actually liked that. It was said in like that condescending way that an older man would chastise you, like, sit down, girl, right? I liked it. Little did I know that girl would eventually turn into little girl in the context of, I'm your daddy and you're my little girl. No. Again, with the short chapters, there were a ridiculous number of chapters in this book. This book, for reference, has 458 pages in the paperback. 458. That's a lot of pages. That's a chunky fucking book. So yeah. A lot of chapters, just like the previous books. Again, very, very short chapters. And like, I would hate to be the person who has to format a special edition of this book, because if it has like chapter heading images, every other page is going to be a chapter heading image in the printed edition because of how short these chapters are. But aside from that, literally every single character in this series, sans what the hell is her name? Aspen, King's sister, who ends up with, I think his name is Rob. It's Dom's second in command. Aside from the two of them, every other character, main character from this series, gets a POV chapter in this book. And again, because it was the end of the series, I can understand why she did that. But aside from the things that I didn't like, aside from the daddy kink thing and like the immediate butt stuff, I liked everything else about this book. I will say I didn't, when I started reading it, after having left off at the end of Dom, the way it left off, I didn't expect it to start out so sedate and so like calm, and like he's just obsessed with his neighbor and they're living on a quiet suburban street and blah blah. I expected it to start out really action packed, and it didn't. And that's not a bad thing. It's just I didn't expect it to go in the direction that it did. I didn't expect him to be in love with the girl next door. You know what I mean? But it worked. Like, it worked out. So, so would I recommend that you read this book if you don't mind daddy kink or you love daddy kink? If you don't mind daddy kink or you love daddy kink, absolutely. It's going to be right up your alley. If you don't mind daddy kink, you will love this book. Even if you are not a fan of daddy kink, I would recommend you read the series. By the time you get to this book, which is book 4 in the series, you may be, like me, so invested that you will get through this book. And there will be a lot of parts you really like. If daddy kink is not your thing. If daddy kink is your thing, then I think you will enjoy the entire series as a whole. Okay? I think that's it. I've been here for an hour and change. Yeah. I can't really think of anything else. I basically told you the whole plot of the book, which I didn't plan on doing. I was going to give you just an overview, but we know what happens, right? We've been here before. So, if you like this video, if you like me and you like my channel, please consider subscribing. I would appreciate it. I do know that a couple of videos ago, I forgot to like move the subscribe thing and the banner thing. It was like right across my face. It's fine. I'm a mess. But yeah, if you would like, you can follow me on social media. I'm very active on Instagram. I will link them all in the description box below, and I'll put a little thing here on the screen for you guys to see. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next one. Bye. Okay, hello, it's me. Am I aware that in my thumbnail I look like a craggy old woman? Yes. Did I do that on purpose? Yes. Because, well, the old part, no, because it's just my face, unfortunately. But the I have words. And I know that's going to be a shock to most of you because I'm so quiet most of the time, right? Anyway, let's do our intro. And then we can get started on this book that infuriated me. Okay, first of all, no, intro. Let's do that. Okay. Okay. My lipstick, or not, it wasn't even lipstick, it was like lip gloss, is so like icky. Is that a word? Icky? It's so icky. Yuck. Because I talked for so long. Anyway, I'm going to go now. I love you. And I will see you in my next video. Okay? I love you so much. And I will see you next time. Clickety click. Clickety click. Click, click, click. I gotta go fix my mascara.